last year was chalky. Last year's NCAA tournament. You had all 4 1 seeds make the Final Four, and the Elite Eights was a 1 versus a 2, a 1 versus a 2, a 1 versus a 2, and a 1 versus a 3. Right now, going into the Sweet 16, 3 out of the 4 1 seeds still remain. Every 2 seed still remains. And you've got 2 3 seeds that are still in. But more importantly, Brad, we haven't gotten the madness. High Point was the highest seed that won a game in the first round. They were a 12 seed. They were the only 12 seed. Once again, all of the top 4 seeds, just like last year, won their first round game. And so you had a lot of folks talking over the weekend. Some of my friends, especially my one friend who filled out a bracket in our show challenge, and he's like in 5th place. He picked Iowa State to win it all. So I think he's going to have a rude awakening next weekend. But he doesn't know a lick of it. But he's like, yeah, I just basically picked like all the high seeds to win. Isn't that how it goes? And I was like, damn, has March Madness universally become too chalky now? Is March Madness boring, Brad? I don't think so. But then again, we talked with our guy Nick Friedel, our Odyssey Sports NBA insider last week, and he said he felt like the kid that finds out Santa Claus isn't real because we just don't have that many upsets anymore. Is that a problem for March Madness? Because I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to fill my brackets, but got to be honest, man, if not for Iowa this weekend, a little boring. I got to be honest.
Yeah, it's blasphemy. Look, there were a number of blowouts in a lot of these games. There was, I think, at least a handful that were 20-plus points decided. But that happens in every single NCAA tournament. People always just, forget about those games and dwell on the memorable moments. And we had a number of those. Some, very enthralling, compelling matchups, highly engrossing from beginning to end. Again, as I mentioned, with Nebraska and Vanderbilt in the round of 32. That was must-see TV. And Tyler Tanner almost had one of the greatest moments with a half-court shot we have ever seen in NCAA tournament history. The St. John's game against Kansas was a thriller. And Dylan Darling, with his offhand, his right hand, because he's a lefty, kissed it off the glass. Winner, winner, chicken dinner for the Johnnies as they march on to the Sweet 16. You had the high point moment. So we did get a brief Cinderella story, but this is the new era that we're living in. This is the new norm. We just got to accept it and deal with it because the NIL reigns supreme. So the teams that have the biggest and fattest bags are going to be plucking the best talent for the mid-major level and bringing them in their squad. So those teams at the lower conference level, they're going to have to rebuild, recycle some of the other guys that aren't nearly as talented. And, they're going to be possibly some of the better ones in the big dance will be competitive. Siena, for example, it gave Duke all they could handle, but eventually fell by the wayside as a 16 seed. But you're only going to get probably like 1 or 2 of these stories every single NCAA tournament. For the most part, chalk is going to reign supreme, and I'm fine with it. Can we just accept quality level of basketball? Historically, what we've always seen, and there's the exception of the Florida Atlantic and San Diego State Final Four from a couple of years ago. That was just bananas. That was completely out of left field. But most of the time we get these like 2 to 3, maybe 4 maximum Cinderella stories of a 12 or lower seed, putting on that glass slipper and marching on to the round of 32. And then they quickly exit. It's pretty rare. I mean, sometimes there are exceptions. The team will win another game and get to the Sweet 16, and then they get their asses handed to them and they're out, and chalk then reigns supreme, and they get pushed to the side in those games and become even better. So what I will say is this. With Cinderella Dunzo, okay, she's still registering a pulse, but faint pulse right now in future NCAA tournaments. So just keep that in mind down the road when you're filling out your brackets next year. Only pick like maybe 1 or 2 or a maximum 3 upsets, because that got to really work out for you. I told my youngest son, who's 17 years old, he fell out of bracket, and he was pissed off all weekend long because his bracket is like, oh, this team's losing, oh, that team's losing, oh, I'm so cooked, I'm done. And I'm like, I said, how many underdogs you took? 7. I'm like, well, that's your problem. That's not the day and age anymore. It's the NIL era age, and the big boys are the ones that are going to be making the most noise in the NCAA tournament. That's not a bad thing. It's going to make these even more competitive games in the round of 32. into the Sweet 16 as a result. So everybody who is like wadding up and throwing away this NCAA tournament, sit down, shut up, drink a beer, sit back and relax, because guess what? You're still going to be watching every single damn minute of the NCAA tournament, and you're going to be glued to what could be incredible action in the Sweet 16.
Phone number to join the show, 310-840-4910. That's 310-840-4910. Do you agree with Brad? Is it better when we have very few upsets because it means the best teams are playing each other in the later rounds? Or do you agree with me? Do you need that Cinderella? And not just to win one game, to get to the Sweet 16, to get to the Elite Eight, hell, to get to the Final Four. I mean, Brad, it was just a couple of years ago. It's not like NIL just started. I know it's taken off here in the last couple of years, and schools actually being able to directly pay players. But literally 3 years ago, what was it, 2022, 2023? We had St. Peter's in the Elite Eight. They beat Purdue. Like, it's not just like they knocked off Kentucky and it was like, all right, now they're going to get crushed. They then beat Murray State. Then they beat Purdue to get to the Elite Eight. I mean, hell, George Mason, like you thought, wow, they beat, they beat Michigan State. Then they beat North Carolina. Wichita, they got fortunate. We had George Mason, Wichita State all the way back in 2006 in the Sweet 16. But then they played UConn in the Elite Eight. And I can't imagine anybody gave them a chance, and they beat the Huskies in OT. So it's like, it's possible for a Cinderella to win a game and then win multiple games and not just get blown out. We're like, oh, damn, I really wish we would have seen the 2 versus the 3 in the Sweet 16, because that would have been a better game. Hell, we got Texas Tech and Alabama 4 versus 5. The game was over at halftime. So, would a team like Akron, would they have been a better matchup if they had beaten Texas Tech, or if Hofstra beaten Alabama? Would that have been a better game? I don't know, but I think I don't know if it's just the blowouts. There have been a lot of blowouts, but I think the thing is, we talked about it briefly last week, the game is getting more and more like the NBA, which is getting more and more like modern day analytical basketball, where these coaches and GMs and the nerds that rule our sports world that we have to bow down to, right? There's so many people upset with where the sport of baseball has gone, where the numbers and the math say the more 3-pointers you shoot, 3 points is worth more than 2. The more 3-pointers you can shoot, the better chance you have of winning. The faster you can play, the more possessions, the better chance you have of winning. And I think that is more so why we get more blowouts. But I'm looking at it just from the fact that even just a couple of years ago, we had a team like St. Peter's go all the way to the Elite Eight. We've seen a team like Loyola Chicago not too long ago make a run to the Final Four. You mentioned FAU, San Diego State, not like small Cinderella schools, but definitely not the blue bloods, the big boys. And they were able to get to the Final Four. I prefer those tournaments, because I still think you can have a lower seed, make a run, and still play competitive basketball and still beat the top dogs. And you're right. I am going to sit down and shut up and fill out my bracket, and I'm going to watch the games regardless. But I think there's a lot of not even casual, just fans that they love March Madness. They're not watching college basketball a year, that I think they'd prefer the upsets. And I got to agree with them. I got to stand for maybe the casual folks here.
Yeah, look, they want the plot twists. That's what they really yearn for. They want to be, compelled. They want to be excited. They want to see just pure madness. That's what the NCAA tournament is known for. That's what some of those unforgettable moments are known for. But all I care about is very competitive games and top quality basketball. Sure. You're right. It could be between a mid-major and a Power 4 school. It could certainly unfold that way. And again, folks, Cinderella, she's just like scrubbing the floor right now. She's going to be back in her ball gown and doing all kinds of twirls and waving a wand and all yada yada yada. Like she will be back at some point in future NCAA tournaments. We will have another St. Peter's story. Hell, I think we may have another Fairleigh Dickinson, another UMBC story at some point. We nearly had it this year with Siena over Duke. So, those stories, they're not dead. They're just on pause. They're on a brief vacation right now, and eventually they'll resurface down the road. But I'm still going to be watching every single tick of every single game. I'm still sucked in by the greatest sports event on the calendar every single year. And we're still having those high drama, high leverage, high pressure moments in which guys are hitting those massive shots like the Iowa game, like Vanderbilt, Nebraska, like St. John's, and also Kansas, and in those moments. So we just need to exhale for a second, not exactly live in the moment of just this NCAA tournament. Just appreciate it for what it is, because those other crooks in the road are going to come back eventually, and it doesn't matter anyway. You're still gonna watch. You're still gonna fill out a bracket. And that's, bottom line is that the NCAA is still making their money. And one of the main reasons why people are still tuning in. And by the way, the news came out today. This is the most watched NCAA tournament first weekend in NCAA tournament history, up 6% from last year, which set a record. And this reset the record. Front Office Sports reported it. Betting has a big part in that. A lot of people get a little action on all these games, and they watch from start to finish. You know what else is betting? Filling out a bracket and submitting it in your office pool. If you put a few greenbacks behind this sucker, you're betting too. So those are all factors that weigh into why the NCAA tournament is still smashing records in viewership year in and year out.
It's a good point you make, and I can't deny it. And like I said, we're still going to watch every year, whether you and I did this for a living or not. I mean, we love the sport. We love March Madness. It is one of the greatest days, if not the greatest day of the sports calendar. That Thursday, Friday. I mean, I was in euphoria. I was in complete euphoria.
Yeah.
I felt like a junkie that got his fix nonstop for 12 hours for Thursday and Friday, and then we got to do a show and talk about it live. But I'm not saying March Madness is in like this tipping point where it's threatening to lose viewership. It's not. And like you said, the office bracket pools, if you bet on the games, legalized sports betting, that is a big part of it. All I'm saying is inside, it feels, it doesn't feel dead. It just feels like maybe that magic won't ever come back. You think it will. You said maybe it resurfaces a couple of years. Is the trend that we've gone in, the direction that we've headed in, NIL, the transfer portal, paying players directly, and the bigger schools can pay them more money. Are we ever going back to getting a Cinderella? Are we ever going to get another big underdog, a 12 seed, a 13 seed, hell, even an 11 seed that wasn't a school like Texas that goes to the Final Four? Are we getting that anytime soon? Because if not, it almost feels like, yeah, just fill out your bracket, make 1, 2, 3, 4 every Sweet 16. And then maybe the second weekend is where we get some crazy stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a little bit pessimistic, but I would say for the folks that are listening and watching right now, when you went to the office today, or when you went to do your job, quote unquote, water cooler talk, I got to imagine it started with, hey, did you see Iowa beat Florida yesterday? What a crazy game that was. That is what draws people in more than anything, from the person that doesn't watch a second of college basketball and hell couldn't tell you a single player on almost any team, to the diehard fans like you and me. I think it's upsets. It's teams that are told that they don't have a chance of winning. The defending champion Florida Gators had almost that entire squad coming back. They definitely missed Walter Clayton, but they had 3 tremendous players coming back with a couple of other high-profile athletes. And the Iowa Hawk, I mean, again, Iowa's not a St. Peter's, but that was a big upset. And I think that's probably what resonated the most with folks over the weekend. The big upset that we got was probably the favorite part of a lot of people's weekends, if you're not a Gators fan. So
that I agree with. That's going to be a conversation driver, to say the least. But, I would have been curious around that same water cooler last year. People might have came up, filled up and said, hey, how you doing in your bracket, man? Oh, yeah, I had this 10 seed, winning a couple of games, taking the Sweet 16. I had this 3 seed in the Final Four. Oh, man, they're gone. They're out. My bracket is dead. I got no shot at all. How about that chalk, man? Who knew all the 1s and 2s would actually advance in the NCAA tournament and still be alive and kicking? Who knew that they would represent eventually in the Final Four? That's unprecedented practically, and it never happens. It's still a conversation driver. Again, people are still going to fill out the brackets. People are still going to talk about it. We're going to ceaselessly analyze the ins and outs at every single game. We're going to try to do the best, break down the X's and O's, and talk to guys like Coach Bruce Weber and other people that are tied to the game, and others that actually have some real skin in the game, as some of the head coaches here, right here on BetMGM tonight, because we do love the sport and we love covering this event every single year. So it honestly doesn't matter. It's not going to really take away. Yeah, you won't have necessarily those magical moments. We're all sprinkling that pixie dust, and we're just like, oh, this is just incredible basketball. I couldn't believe that the 15 beat the 2 in the West region, like with Middle Tennessee State knocking off Michigan State a few years ago. Those moments won't, they're not done. They're not like dead 6 feet under. They're going to resurface at some point. We're just in this day and age that those instances are going to be minimalized because of NIL and a lot of these mid-major programs that are getting plucked by those Power 4 schools because those best players can make what kind of money? I can make a cool mill playing for Kansas. I can make a mill playing for Texas Tech. Hell yeah, I'm going to leave Murray State. Hell yeah, I'm going to leave Bethune-Cookman. I'm going to go there, get my bag, get my money, and hopefully win a few games and maybe be in the conversation for a Final Four and a national title. That's the reality of the situation. And what we need to do is fully embrace it.
Yeah. I'm half joking when I say, yeah, just fully embrace the rich getting richer and then the top dogs never losing and the little guy never having a chance. I'm half joking when I say that. And again, I'm not saying that March Madness is in jeopardy. You said the viewership is as high as it's ever been. It broke a record 2 years in a row. I just wish we got some more upsets. I don't think there's a lot of folks on social media, and I'm sure there's some people performative. Oh, this tournament sucks. This is the worst tournament ever. That's performative. I do think, though, on a serious level, though, I just would like to see some more upsets. The plot twist, the drama, right? Why do people watch reality TV? Like, God beats me. But I think a lot of people watch March Madness because they think they're going to have this underdog Cinderella story with some players that might be doing your taxes in a couple of years from now, like Jack Galkey from Oakland. And for a day, for a game, they become superstars. They become celebrities. Alvaro Fulgaris hitting that 3. And, the story that he has taken on, I think those are still the best parts of March Madness. So